It's impossible to talk about the origin of ninja action figures without first discussing the ninja craze that took popular culture by storm, with the phenomenon reaching its peak during the 1980s. While ninjas date back centuries, the concept of the 80s ninja is its own beast entirely, as the pop culture media of the time depicted these assassins as having almost supernatural powers, and during that decade, ninjas were everywhere, from comics, magazines and television, to cinema, video games, and of course, the action figure aisle. 80s ninjas were often the stars of their own media brands, while just as frequently finding themselves infiltrating other franchises, such as Magnum P.I., G.I. Joe, Knight Rider, and Rambo. Wait a second, Rambo had ninjas?
They drew first blood, not me.
I thought you were the Italian stallion, not the American ninja.
I'm expendable.
What do you mean, expendable?
It's like someone invites you to a party, and you don't show up. It doesn't really matter, because ninjas are invisible.
They're not invisible! They're right there! I can see them!
Don't push it, or I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Okay, Johnny, forget I asked. This conversation is over.
Nothing is over! Nothing!
So dust off your black pyjamas and apply some eyeliner as we take a look back at the origin of 1980s ninja action figures. Stay tuned.
Come with me, toy fans.
Western culture was immersed in a kung fu craze throughout most of the 1970s, thanks in no small part to the global megastardom of actor and martial artist Bruce Lee. Yet as audience interest in genre cinema changes as frequently as the tide, by the end of the 70s American entertainment companies began looking around for the next chop-socky influence that could help keep martial arts cinema alive in a new decade. While ninjas had frequently flirted with cinema during the 60s and 70s, there was yet to be a movie that featured a ninja as a central character. In 1980, Eric Van Laspader's novel The Ninja became a New York Times bestseller, and following its success, several movie studios started working on ninja-themed scripts. The first film to truly break through in Western culture was Enter the Ninja, starring Italian actor Franco Nero, helmed by Israeli director Menahem Golan, and released by Cannon Films in 1981. And this movie is widely recognised as the flashpoint that ignited the 80s ninja craze. Enter the Ninja is not even close to being considered one of the best 80s ninja flicks, but its impact on the genre cannot be overstated. Months prior to the release of this Cannon film, ninjas made their way into Marvel Comics, with both the scantily clad ninja assassin Elektra and the Hand Ninja Clan appearing in Frank Miller's Daredevil run, providing further evidence of the ninja's ever-widening impact on popular culture in the 1980s. But we wouldn't see our first ninja action figure until 1982. And no, I'm not talking about this guy. While the Hasbro-produced G.I. Joe Snake Eyes figure was released in '82, at that time he was a Commando, and we wouldn't learn of his ninja origins until sometime later. The first 80s ninja action figure was actually a die-cast metal minifigure named Savitar, who was created by the Mego toy company for their Eagle Force line. 1983 kicked off with a ninja appearing alongside Tom Selleck in a Season 3 episode of Magnum P.I., and in September of that year Cannon Films released their next ninja flick, titled Revenge of the Ninja, and this film is easily my favourite among all 80s ninja movies. Revenge of the Ninja was directed by Sam Furstenberg and starred Sho Kosugi in the lead role, and this Japanese actor and martial artist would go on to become the quintessential 80s cinema ninja. While we weren't offered any ninja action figures in 1983, the floodgates would truly open the following year. 1984 started with Sho Kosugi appearing alongside Lee Van Cleef in a ninja-centric television show called The Master, and motorcycle manufacturer Kawasaki adopted the ninja name for its new sport motorcycle that would redefine the modern street bike. Yet the most pivotal moment occurred when Marvel released issue 21 of G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero in March 1984. This comic story, titled Silent Interlude, is notable for being an entirely dialogue-free issue, and for showcasing the first appearance of Stormshadow, the white ninja assassin with ties to the Cobra terrorist organisation. In this issue, Snake Eyes parachutes onto a Cobra castle in an attempt to rescue the G.I. Joe agent Scarlet, who is being held prisoner inside. The issue ends after a brief confrontation between Snake Eyes and Stormshadow, and in the last few comic panels of the issue, it is revealed that these two characters have the exact same tattoo on their forearms. But more on those tattoos later in the video. The first Stormshadow action figure follows shortly after the release of this comic, and is an instant sellout, and the entire G.I. Joe mythology henceforth leans heavily on ninja storylines. This action figure represents a white ninja wearing a black sash with bare arms, and the children of the 80s fell in love with all his awesome ninja weapon accessories. Stormshadow is armed with both a short and long ninja sword, a pair of nunchucks, and an archery bow. He also has a backpack with arrows moulded into the accessory, but the coolest feature is that the backpack can be used to store all his weapons, with sheaths for both the swords, a position to clip on his bow, and the backpack folds open and can be used to store the nunchucks. In May of 1984, a short-run comic from creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird was first published. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a violent black and white comic that definitely wasn't aimed at children upon its launch. This independent comic was a surprise success when it made its debut. Yet in terms of turtle action figures, we'll have to revisit this franchise a little later in the video. Later that same year, the Remco toy company would release their Secret of the Ninja action figures, but that title is a little misleading because there was only a single ninja figure in the first wave, with the other characters being based on different martial arts disciplines, such as judo, karate, and kung fu. As with most Remco products, the ninja action figure features rudimentary sculpting and basic articulation, yet the inclusion of a removable ninja mask is a nice added touch. The figure also came with two swords, one that clearly looks like a ninjato, the name given to the sword by its creator Sho Kosugi, and another that looks like, well, I have no idea what this type of sword is. This ninja figure also included a play feature that Remco called an Actionizer, and this consisted of a small lever on the figure's back that, when operated, made the figure's arms move up and down, slashing around his sword in the process. In August 1984, Marvel Comics published issue 26 of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and we finally learned the meaning of these iconic tattoos, and the backstory of two of the most popular and mysterious G.I. Joe characters, Snake Eyes and Stormshadow. In this two-part story, we discover that Snake Eyes, Stalker and Tommy, aka Stormshadow, served together in the Vietnam War, and after being wounded in combat, Snake Eyes is left disfigured and mute. After returning to America and learning that his family was killed by a drunk driver, Snake Eyes heads to Japan to take up Tommy on his offer of joining the family business. It transpires that the business is a ninja clan named the Arashikage, and the clan symbol is the same as the tattoo that both of these characters wore on their forearms back in issue 21. Snake Eyes is trained in the ways of ninjutsu by the Arashikage clan, and when the Hard Master is assassinated and Stormshadow is wrongfully blamed for the killing, so begins a bitter ongoing conflict between these two former friends, with Snake Eyes joining the G.I. Joe team and Stormshadow working for Cobra. I first read this story when it appeared in Action Force Weekly in 1987, and it quickly became my favourite subplot of the entire series. Following these revelations, Hasbro redesigned the Snake Eyes action figure for 1985, and he went from being simply a commando and became a ninja commando. Now sporting his famous visor, armed with a sword and Uzi, and coming packed in with his wolf companion Timber, Snake Eyes version 2 quickly became one of the best-selling figures in the entire G.I. Joe line, and a personal favourite of mine in childhood. Alongside other new ninja movies such as 9 Deaths of the Ninja and Pray for Death, Cannon Films also kicked off its post-Sho Kosugi era in 1985 with American Ninja, a film once pitched as a Chuck Norris vehicle. New franchise star Michael Dudikoff proved quite popular, with American Ninja going on to become one of the most lucrative 80s ninja flicks. This film is also notable for having the only example of a ninja toy officially licensed from an 80s ninja movie, with manufacturer Fleetwood producing this cheap American Ninja action figure in late 1985. I was a big fan of American Ninja in my youth, and when it comes to 80s ninja movies, Revenge of the Ninja is up here and American Ninja is like right there behind it. In 1986, the Leonard Toy Company released the G.I. Joe knockoff toy line, The Core, and the initial range included a ninja action figure named Hiro Yamato. During the same year, Hasbro launched their Ninja Warriors range, which established the scale and style of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figures a year before their debut. The uber-violent Rambo film series was also marketed to children in 1986 by way of an action figure line and accompanying cartoon titled Rambo: The Force of Freedom. Given the popularity of the ninja craze at this time, toy company Coleco opted to add ninjas into the figure and storyline, even though ninjas had never appeared in a Rambo movie. 2 characters were created, White Dragon and Black Dragon, and they were on opposing sides of the story's conflict. The White Ninja was aligned with the Force of Freedom, and the Black Ninja sided with Savage, the secret army of vengeance, anarchy and global extortion. So we have a black-clad ninja and a white-clad ninja, and they're on opposing sides. Where have I seen that before? While their accessories differ, the base action figures are identical in sculpting and construction, yet they are distinguishable by the colour of their outfits and the team emblems worn on their shoulders. White Dragon is armed with a throwing knife, a ninja star and a crossbow, as well as a spring-loaded backpack that whips a ninja sword into his hand at the push of a button. In theory, this sounds like a neat gimmick, but in practice, it's totally useless, as the ninja sword remains permanently attached to the backpack via a connecting arm. Black Dragon has the better accessories, and he also comes with a throwing knife and ninja star, as well as a sword that can be sheathed on his back and a spring-loaded crossbow. Both of these figures also have a weapon called a Bakahatsu, back at ya sugar mama. A Bakahatsugama is a Kama weapon that is attached to a chain and handle, and I imagine they would be quite the lethal weapon when wielded by an expert. Rambo wouldn't be the only action movie character to get his own toy line with ninjas in 1986. Enter Kenna's Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. While this line was based on Chuck Norris the martial artist and not any of his specific film characters, does it really matter? I mean, Chuck Norris just played Chuck Norris in every movie he was in anyway. The Chuck Norris Karate Commandos toy line and cartoon was short-lived due to a major lack of interest from 80s children, but I can't ignore the fact that Chuck's nemesis in this line was Super Ninja, one of the worst designed action figures of the 80s, who happens to look just like the worst designed Master of the Universe action figure ever made. And speaking of Motu, 1987 would also see ninjas enter the fictional world of Eternia. Being released late into Mattel's original Masters of the Universe toy run means that Ninja is quite desirable on today's collector's market. And he's a ninja, so of course we want him. The Ninja action figure utilises the standard Motu figure body and was supplied with a soft goods jacket and ninja hood. He's also armed with a sword, a bow and a pair of nunchucks. This figure was reissued for Mattel's Masters of the Universe Origins line in early 2021, and if you're looking to acquire a Ninja today, I recommend the modern version, because the figure's articulation is far superior to the original, and you can avoid the hefty price tag attached to the vintage edition. Also released in 1987 was G.I. Joe's first female ninja, codenamed Jinx, and Sega's popular ninja-themed arcade game, Shinobi. But in December of that year, the 80s ninja craze would change dramatically, with the introduction of a new animated television series called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Based on the Eastman and Laird comic book that was first published back in 1984, the concept of the Ninja Turtles was made kid-friendly by production company Fred Wolf Studios, and the animated series became one of the most popular cartoons in the world. The story centered on 4 turtles named after famous Italian artists, Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael and Michelangelo, who were transformed into mutant ninjas after a toxic ooze is accidentally spilt in the sewer system where they live. When the creators of the original comic were writing this story, they made several nods to the early 80s Daredevil comics. You know, the ones that also featured ninjas? Daredevil's ninja instructor was named Stick, whereas the Turtles sensei is named Splinter. And where Daredevil did battle with the Hand Clan ninjas, the Turtles fought the Foot Clan. In 1988, the Playmates toy company released the first Turtles action figures, and I was 11 years old at the time, and can clearly remember just how popular they were when they first started appearing in Australian toy stores. They were flying off the shelves, and at the time retailers were struggling to get enough stock to meet the rabid demand. Turtle Mania had truly taken hold, yet in spite of this phenomenon, I always found the Playmates action figures to be quite disappointing. They each came with storage belts and a bunch of weapon accessories, but their sculpting was simplistic, and their built-in poses made most of the figures difficult to stand on their own. During the same year that the Turtles hit store shelves, Hasbro also offered a new version of Stormshadow for the G.I. Joe line, and although a lot of collectors prefer the original figure, Stormshadow version 2 is my personal favourite, if for no other reason than the fact that he has the Arashikage tattoo on his forearm. As the 80s drew to a close, the concept of ninjas and ninja action figures would be reinvented for a new decade. In the 1990s, kickboxing would become the new martial arts genre of choice, and 80s films like Cannon's Ninja Trilogy would become uncool in the eyes of the public. The ninja movie genre has never seen a successful revival, which is why I'm constantly astounded when Hasbro continues to push the ninja elements of their current G.I. Joe classified line. In the 80s this stuff was awesome, but ninjas ain't been cool for 30 years. Listen up Action Force, the garrison is about to outflank us, but don't panic. We've got reinforcements. Meet Snake Eyes. He's got a sword and a wolf. Hey Snake, tell him what modern warfare tactics you're going to employ to win this battle. Don't get me wrong, I do like these G.I. Joe Classified series figures, and they're getting better all the time. This Stormshadow figure is awesome. I just don't see how ninjas will draw new fans to the franchise when the superhuman abilities possessed by 80s ninjas have become a joke in modern fandom.
That rack was not built by ninjas.
When you look back at the ninja action figures of the 1980s, the decade gave us the awesome, the obscure, the radical and the iconic. And it was great while it lasted. Cannon Films, Sho Kosugi, G.I. Joe and Larry Hama were instrumental in developing the tropes and shaping pop culture's idea of what ninjas were in the 80s. Eastman, Laird, Playmates Toys and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would forever redefine the concept for the next generation of fans, and ninjas would never be the same again. So thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video you can click the links up here to check out some of our other vintage toy retrospectives, or subscribe to the channel by clicking down here. I'm Tony from Analog Toys, and I'll see you in the next video.